Bengals have a chance to get healthy over the bye week. Let's take a look at where they are from a health perspective, and let's get into Darren Simmons' comments on the special teams unit.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On podcast.
This is that bye-week shimmy, Jake. This is that bye-week shimmy, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hit the shimmy, Jake. Right here.
Bringing you coverage of your Cincinnati Bengals every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We appreciate all of you who subscribe, who follow, and who make us your first listen. This podcast today is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for Locked On Bengals listeners. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. James, a lot to get to today, as we've got one of our last appearances from the Bengals for a while in terms of media availability. Some big injury updates for a number of guys, a non-update for Ja'Marr Chase. Darren Simmons spoke with the media on Monday as well, and the hints or the possibilities of a punter change discussed, as well as Evan McPherson's little rut that he's been in for the last couple of weeks. And just to tease our audience, we've got a film review, of course, coming up this week. We can talk about what went well for the Bengals in the running game. We'll do that with Mike Sands tomorrow, and we've got Lou Anarumo really burying the lead, as we always do. We've got Lou Anarumo coming your way later this week as well. So a lot to look forward to this week, James. But before we get into any of those episodes today, let's talk about what Zach Taylor had to tell us about some of these injured Bengals. A couple of guys that had some injuries on Sunday. Chris Evans will be week to week. He has a knee issue that he's working with, PCL, I believe. And Dax Hill, both Michigan guys. Dax Hill's shoulder will be week to week. The other updates, DJ Reader looks good for him. Mike Hilton had finger surgery, which was not something that was known. Had to have a broken finger repaired surgically, so sounded like things are going to be good for him to get back for Pittsburgh. And Ja'Marr Chase, no real update, James. And those are the big ones off the top of my head. Did I forget anything?
Well, no, just, some details. Mike Hilton broke his finger in 3 places and had to have surgery, and had surgery on, I believe it was Tuesday is how he said, and then someone else said Wednesday morning. So regardless, had surgery last week. He is expected to be good to go for Pittsburgh, which is just proof that NFL players are freaks. Just going to put that out there. He got hurt in the Cleveland game, doesn't even remember when, played obviously all the way through it, and then looked at his hand afterwards and it started barking at him a little bit. So the fact that he was able to play with a broken finger in 3 places and not realize how broken it was, how significant it was, I think that's just a testament to Mike Hilton. So he's
and adrenaline. Adrenaline's a hell of a drug.
It is, no doubt about it. But he's back and going to be back. And he didn't leave any doubt. It wasn't, well, we'll see how it is or anything like that. He said, no, I'm going to be back. And the fact that he talked, usually injured players don't talk. I think that's a really, really good sign. Unfortunately, no injury update on Ja'Marr Chase. By the way, if you're Zach Taylor, would you risk that 13 days before your next game? I get why he wouldn't do that. So overall, I think if you can get, let's just leave Ja'Marr out of it. If you could get Mike Hilton back, if you could get DJ Reader back, those are 2 big names, big games that you'd get back for a divisional matchup. That's obviously must win because you're 0-3 in the division. So overall, I think it's pretty good news on the injury front. I'm bummed, absolutely bummed, for a guy in Dax Hill who's been thrown into like about 52 different scenarios where he's getting asked about Jesse Bates this offseason. Then he plays safety with the first team. Then he gets moved and is with the second team. Then he plays cornerback on Monday Night Football. Then he plays with the corners all week last week, gets out there a bit and gets dinged up. It sucks. I hope it's not super serious. Like I said, his shoulder was kind of hanging there. His arm was. Obviously, it's a shoulder injury. And I hope to catch up with him before the bye. He was not in the locker room on Monday, so I did not get to talk to him. But if I see him, I'm gonna talk to him and wish him well, because that stinks.
Yeah, hopefully he's okay and it's nothing serious. Shoulder injuries, pretty wide range of outcomes for those injuries. Sometimes relatively harmless, pops out, pops in. Sometimes can be something that takes a long time to recover, depending on what exactly happened with the joint and all the tissues around the joint.
And then real quick on Chris Evans, you're right.
Mhm.
It's grade 2 PCL, according to Zach Taylor. To me, what's going to happen, and makes sense, right? Travion Williams is going to suddenly become active. He's on the 53-man roster already. You don't need to elevate him or anything like that. But I also could see him returning kicks.
Yeah, that's the question, right? Who returns kicks?
Yeah, is it Trent Taylor? Is it Travion Williams? And so that part will be, a little interesting. But obviously, Travion has experience doing that if they want him to. And it's not like, and I love that Chris Evans has tried to return some recently and has gotten the opportunity to, but they haven't been able to break any anyway. So who knows? Maybe Travion Williams is the next man up and can do that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether it is Williams or it's Trent Taylor. Maybe Chris Evans will get back sooner than later. I'm not clear on the recovery for this sort of injury. Hopefully, again, it's not too bad for him. He had an opportunity. That's why that one's a bummer. Talking about a bummer for these guys. He had an opportunity with Samaje Perine getting a little banged up. Looked like he was going to get some run there, but tried to come back into the game. Couldn't quite do it. And obviously there's something structural here that needs to heal up.
And late in the game, which I wanted to see on Monday night anyways, but late in the game, he would have gotten a lot of run.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would have pulled Perine, and it would have been the Chris Evans show, and he would have had a shot to kind of show what he can do. So, yeah, it sucks. It sucks anytime someone gets injured, but especially these role players that like waiting for your chance. And in Dax's situation, he did get his chance. Chris might have gotten his chance, and neither of them get their chance now because of injury.
Yeah, and with Chris Evans, there's at least even a role for him in the offense. It's not as big as a lot of fans want it to be, but he does get out there for a handful of plays a game, and sometimes they can be impactful plays, as we saw with him catching the go route against the Browns last week. So, hoping those guys, of course, get well soon. Also, like Brandon Wilson, who knows what's going on there? Tyson Anderson could be back at some point. Those guys still working their way back, and with Dax's injury, maybe an opportunity for one of those guys to get back onto the roster if they're healthy. The big one here is DJ Reader, obviously. This is the one that they've been feeling pretty good about. This is in line with the original expected timeline for Reader coming back after the bye week. It sounded like there's going to be a decision made on Reader on Monday, so we'll look for a roster move there and see if anything happens. Certainly the hope, right? He lets you do so much. And we'll talk to Lou Anarumo about this with the back part of this defense, with the secondary, with the back seven, because he can do things that most players, especially in the modern NFL, when two gapping isn't really a thing right now, he can do that. And he can do that from a number of positions where you don't necessarily expect him to. So, getting him back, we've talked about it a lot. He does a lot for this defense. And we've talked about him as one of the most important players on this defense. So if they can get him back for this stretch run, that's a big shot in the arm for a team that now has, been dealing with some injuries for a couple of weeks here. So really looking forward to DJ Reader's return, because he does crazy things on tape every week and is really a true joy to watch when you're watching the defensive side of the ball. What hasn't been a true joy to watch, James, is the special teams unit the last couple of weeks. I joked toward the end of the game a few times on Twitter that Darren Simmons is probably the only angry Bengals employee after that demolition show that the Bengals put on against the Panthers on Sunday. But I think we can talk special teams as Darren Simmons talked to the media on Monday coming up next. Before we get there, this episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. And when life comes at you, doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. And BetterHelp has therapists that are trained to help you figure out the cause of these challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills. And that makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online. Everyone deserves to feel their best. BetterHelp makes that easier to get started. And the thing that we've talked about before, one of the great features of BetterHelp is that if you get matched with a therapist and it's not working for you for whatever reason, it's easy to get back out there and get a new therapist lined up. They have a questionnaire that will help you get connected with a therapist that is more suited for the things that you want to work on. So right now, you can check it all out at BetterHelp. BetterHelp is HELP.com/locked on. You can save 10% on your first month again at BetterHelp.com/locked on.
And now I got to tell you about Schultz and Sons, because look, the holidays, well, they're essentially here, which is wild. I can't believe it's holiday time. And with the holidays coming up, some of you are planning on popping the big question, and each day gets you closer and closer to the big moment. Well, I got to be honest. If I was popping the question tomorrow, you know where I would go? Schultz and Sons, because you're going to get the advice that you need to find the perfect diamond, the perfect ring for her. Don't lose sleep over it. Don't be anxious. You have enough to think about, and that's why Schultz and Sons is here. They're a Cincinnati tradition for more than 65 years. They've been around, and they're huge Bengals fans, by the way, longer than the Bengals franchise. And so whatever diamond you pick, it has to be perfect, and that's why it has to be Schultz and Sons. They are trained diamond experts, and they are AGS certified. And look, they're close by. All you have to do is go south, assuming you're at Paul Brown Stadium. Let's just assume Paycor Stadium now, but PBS, let's be honest, that's what we call it. If you're at PBS, well, you just go a little south. They're just off the exit in Fort Mitchell, 5 minutes away from the bridge, 2202 Dixie Highway in Fort Mitchell. Plug it into your GPS. You'll be surprised at how easy it is to find. They have financing available for up to 18 months, same as cash. So that part's easy too. So if you're looking for that perfect diamond, look no farther. From custom designs and anything in between, Schultz and Sons has you covered. And if you're not looking for a diamond ring, you're not getting engaged, but you're still looking for something perfect for her, Schultz and Sons also has you covered for that as well. When it has to be perfect, it has to be Schultz and Sons.
James, who gets your perfect Schultz and Sons game ball? And it's not anybody on the special teams unit. Is it the offensive line as a unit, or are you giving it to Joe Mixon for his performance?
Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five tutties. If you score 5 touchdowns in Madden, you get the Schultz and Sons game ball. So, of course, Joe Mixon gets the Schultz and Sons game ball. It's history. Literally is going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 24 more hours to think about this, and we will get the Evan McPherson and Kevin Huber and all that. And you're actually going to hear from Evan McPherson in a second. But that Joe Mixon game is literally going to go neck and neck with the Corey Dillon 278-yard game. That's not the NFL record anymore, and Bengals fans talk about it all over. So I know I kind of referenced it and referred to it in our post-game show. Even more time removed from it now, Jake, I think that's fully entrenched. So yeah, Joe Mixon, congrats, man. Schultz and Sons game ball.
Yeah, we got to get Joe. I mean, Joe likes his jewelry. You got to get Joe down there. Next time you see Joe, tell him.
Hey, Joe, you want to get more iced out? Let's go. Schultz and Sons. I'll drive.
We'll take a trip.
It's 5 minutes. We don't need to take your fancy car there, Joe. I don't even know what Joe drives. I know it's fancier than my Daewoo.
It's definitely fancy. I can all but guarantee that it is a very fancy vehicle. Let's get into the special teams, though. I've talked about for a few weeks that the kick return game hasn't been very good for the Bengals. I think that trend has continued for the most part. Trent Taylor very nearly fumbled again in the punt return game, although he has
Trent Taylor's been good. Yeah, Trent Taylor's been good.
He just has to tuck the ball away. You can't fumble on punts. He has been pretty good, I would say, at getting a little bit out of some of these punt returns and consistently, which is important. I'm not saying that to diminish what he's doing. I'm saying that like getting 10 to 15 yards consistently in the punt return game, which he's been doing lately, is pretty good. So there's one. Kevin Huber, we talked about this a little bit last week, continues to not hit good punts. And Evan McPherson now has missed his last 2 field goals from the 40 to 49-yard range. Has been a bit of a hiccup for McPherson. And, young kicker development, not linear. we've talked about some of these things before, but Darren Simmons talked a lot about Kevin Huber before we get to Evan McPherson. I think Evan McPherson is going to be part of the Bengals for a long time here. At least that would be what you would expect, barring things going completely sideways. Kevin Huber, though, judging from what Darren Simmons had to say, maybe that's a bit more of a toss-up in the immediate future.
He said, quote, "We're not getting getting out of it what we need to get out of it in terms of flipping the field. It's something we need to take a look at over this bye week and try to figure out what's best moving forward." And he reiterated that he's going to do what's best for the team. We've got to do something to put our team in a good spot to control field position, and we've got to be better with that. Look, Drue Chrisman has the stronger leg. They've had Drue Chrisman go through essentially game day routines where in Darren Simmons talked about this, where punters go, that they kick punters and kickers. They kick more on game day than they do any other day. And so they've been making Drue do that just to get used to it. And he also said, everyone talks about the holding. Also said that the decision to go with Kevin Huber had nothing to do with the holding because Drue Chrisman's been great and has still been holding in practice, even though he's on the practice squad. I think they have a real decision on their hands, Jake, because you look at Kevin Huber, he's averaging 38 yards per punt over the past couple of games. He had that 23-yard punt where, and I said it, Ben Baby tweeted it, but I said, if you can't punt your age, then you can't. But it's true, man. It's true. Like, that's not even a knock. Like, that's not.
It gets really hard when you turn 55, James.
Yeah, but he's not. And he came into camp looking good. Yeah. And I honestly, what's kind of baffling to me is what Darren said and what Kevin has said, because Darren's not saying anything Kevin doesn't know, is that Kevin's practicing well. Mm-hmm. He's hitting the ball well. It looks good in practice. And then at game day, it's not translating. And that's something that happens to a young kid, to the Drue Chrismans of the world, where it just doesn't, you don't look the same, whatever reason it is. I feel like a veteran, it should almost be the opposite, where it's like, just get him to game day. It has not been the case right now with Kevin Huber. And I think it's going to be a real debate, and it would not shock me. I'm not saying they're going to go that route, but it would not shock me one bit if they make that decision as they self-scout over the next few days.
I just don't know why you wouldn't, I guess. Like, if it doesn't work, do you think Kevin Huber's going to sign elsewhere and not be amenable to coming back if they needed to bring him back? I feel like he would. He's been here his whole career. It's not like it would be a really ugly breakup if he's just not performing. And he knows he's not, because statistically, since week 3, he was okay for the first couple of weeks of the season. And maybe this is just age catching up to him, and he's slowing down a little bit, can't sustain it through the season. Since week 3, that the third lowest hang time in the NFL, and we've gone through this, the lowest yards per kick in the NFL, the second lowest net yards per kick in the NFL. I mean, love Kevin Huber. Been a Cincinnati Bengal for a long time, hasn't been a problem for a long time. But if ever there was a clear time to try to make a change at the position, this feels like a real slap in the face in terms of, like, this is something that could be an obvious choice.
And here's the thing. 1, if it's not about the holding. 2, we know Drue Chrisman has the stronger leg. 3, the reason you go with Huber over Chrisman is you know what you're going to get. Well, let me ask you, Jake Lisco. Are you confident that you know what you're getting from number 10 week in and week out right now? Because I'm not confident in what he's giving you punt in and punt out. And that's why I made that comment after the 23-yarder. And again, I probably shouldn't have said that on the pot. Whatever. I'm being forthright in saying what my instant thought was when he kicked a 23-yard punt. It's, what the heck is going on? Mm-hmm. A lot of his inside the 20s have been on the 19. Does that really count inside the 20?
Yeah.
Does it? I would rather a guy that can put you inside the 5 on half of those, or inside the 10 on half of those, and then the other half go for touchbacks anyway, because it's literally a 5-6 yard difference.
I mean, I'm at this point in favor of trying something different for the sake of trying something different. Kevin Huber just isn't what he was in the preseason, isn't what he was in the first couple games of the season, and has been consistently performing poorly. And if you had to ask me if I knew what I was getting with Kevin Huber, the answer probably wouldn't be very positive, unfortunately, at this point. And I really would prefer that it were. So, in a lot of ways, I'm in favor of trying something different to try something different. And if it doesn't work with Chrisman, then you deal with it again next year. and you bring some more competition in, and you fix your punter job. But right now, Kevin Huber, in Darren Simmons' words, not doing what they need him to do, and not getting what they need. They're not getting what they need to get out of him. And the same is true for Evan McPherson. But like I said, that's not something that is as much of a concern long term. So let's hear from Evan McPherson on what's going on with him, and wrap up this conversation coming up next.
But first, a word from PrizePicks, because PrizePicks is daily fantasy the way daily fantasy should be. And look, whether you want to take the over on Patrick Mahomes' yards this coming week and say he's going to go for more than their PrizePicks projection, you could do that, or you could go less. I hope you took the more range for Joe Mixon this past week, which I don't know how many of you would have done that given how he played in recent weeks, but clearly Joe Mixon still has something left in the tank. And so what you do with PrizePicks is you pick 2 to 5 players, and whether they will score more or less than their projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com right now, or use the PrizePicks app, download it in the App Store to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, you're going to get $100. If you deposit $75, you're going to get $75 bonus dollars. Deposit match, boom, with promo code Locked On. Again, use promo code Locked On at sign up with the PrizePicks app or at prizepicks.com.
Evan McPherson has missed some field goals lately, James.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a whole lot of panic, I would say, around his performance. But the operation hasn't been what it frankly needs to be in some of the close games that could be coming down the stretch for this team when you need Evan McPherson to be reliable on some of those longer kicks. What's the sense you have around this right now? You've long been a huge supporter of Evan McPherson, and what's your sense about what's going on? And then we can hear from him.
Well, I'm finally willing to admit that there is something going on. Last week I wasn't, because I thought it was a bad game, but you miss another 40-plus yarder. And so it's like, okay, well, what's up? What's going on? And so I'll give my thoughts, but heck, if I'm going to say what's going on, I might as well ask Evan McPherson what's going on. Past couple games, couple misses. I know, at least outside, people would say, oh, well, he never misses. Money Mac never misses. What's going on? Is anything going on? Just a couple misses?
No, nothing's going on. It's just typical. Like, I'm human. I'm not a robot. I miss. I make mistakes. So that's pretty much the only thing that's happening.
Going and looking back at yesterday's game, what happened on that kick? Could you break it down?
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't hit it clean. That's all it really comes down to. Just kind of got to go out there and execute and hit the ball clean, and just really got to make it.
What about in Cleveland? Was there anything different about that game with any of those misses?
No. I thought in Cleveland I hit the ball clean and just kind of wasn't meant to be, I guess. Me and Eddie, we had a good talk before and after the game, and it really puts it in perspective that pretty much everything in our lives is already planned out in one way or another, and so I go out there and I do my best. If the ball doesn't go through the uprights, then we just kind of move on and go to the next one.
Evan, there's also a lot of time left in the season, and kickers are all about, like yourself, making adjustments throughout the year. Is that at the point you're at where you're going to be making adjustments constantly?
No, I mean, I feel like I'm in a good place in my kicking and my preparation, and my mental focus, and so I'm just going to keep going and doing what I'm doing.
Have you had a stretch, dating back to even as far as like high school, where maybe you had a string of misses where you kind of had to sort of recollect and kind of readjust?
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely all have our struggles, and right now it's just, I guess, getting on a roll, getting confidence back, and we're just going to keep going.
Like you said, there's a lot of football left, but what do you do in the bye week? Like, how do you sort of disconnect from everything, but also kind of refocus at the same time moving forward?
Yeah, probably going to be on the golf course. That's how I'm going to refocus, and I'm really going to enjoy this bye week because this next half of the season, obviously, it's going to be long to get back to where we want to be. So I'm just going to enjoy this week off.
Are you staying in town?
No, I'm going back to Auburn to watch my little brother play.
Oh, nice. Good stuff there from Evan McPherson, going back to Auburn to watch his little brother play. I have to share this story because Darren Simmons, shocker, not concerned about Evan McPherson. And the reason why is kind of wild. And it was like breaking news. I think it was mind-blowing to Dan Horde and mind-blowing to a lot of the writers that were around. So Evan McPherson was just awesome during the Bengals playoff run and really all last season, right? We can all admit that. Well, either before one of these two games, either before the Titans game or before the Chiefs game, Darren Simmons could not recall which. Evan McPherson missed not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, 7 kicks in practice to end practice. 7, Jake. And Darren was like, it was wild. And we said, do it again. And at some point they just called practice and that was it. But it didn't prevent him from booting 4 field goals in both games. It didn't, he didn't carry it with him. And I think that was Darren Simmons' point is like, I trust him because he doesn't take the last kick to the next kick. And you could kind of see that and hear it depending on if you're watching or listening. And Evan McPherson's voice doesn't sound like he's too worried, which that's a heck of a thing to have because I don't have that. And I don't think many human beings have that kind of short-term memory.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important skill for a kicker, right? The same as it is for quarterbacks. You make a mistake, you got to come back and you can't live with it. You can't let it haunt you. And he's going to have to come back and make some kicks this year. I think that, he would admit that he's not performing as well as he would like with the issues early in the year without a long snapper and the challenges, the challenging situation that creates, but also just missing more than he would like to, I'm sure, from 40 to 49 yards. He's been great from 50 plus this year. Hasn't had an opportunity in a while, but 4 of 4 there. And maybe he just needs that pressure. Maybe he has a clutch gene, and without the pressure to make it clutch, the performance just isn't quite at the same level.
It's weird because you're right. I mean, obviously the Steelers stuff, but I don't really put that on him. But it's not like these kicks the past 2 weeks have cost them anything. So you do wonder, like, was he already mentally like thinking, hey man, where are we going to dinner after this game? It's already 42-21. I'm just kidding. Of course, I'm sure he was focused on the kick, but yeah, they're going to need him to be better because every point's going to matter in the second half of the year with the quarterbacks. Just look at the quarterbacks alone that they have in December. It's going to be tough sledding, and obviously they need every point they can on the road against Pittsburgh and Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I think you also made the point, James, that he hasn't kicked as many field goals, and I just looked at this. So last year he kicked 47 field goals. This includes the postseason though. So in the regular season he kicked 33 field goals. This year only 15. He's kicked more extra points. I think he's on pace for a little bit more in terms of extra points, or maybe similar. So. Yeah, just gotta tighten up that 40 to 49 yard range. That was his Achilles heel last year too. It was just 67% on those kicks. Last year was 81% from 50 plus. This year, 57% so far on 7 kicks from 40 to 49 and 100% from 50 plus. So that if that's a flaw in his game, there's a clear area to improve on for him and something that, like I said, he's young. He's going to be part of this team, I think, for a while, unless things go really sideways here. So hopefully he bounces back from this and becomes the Evan McPherson that we were hoping would turn into the next great thing in the NFL.
I didn't call him Money Mac for nothing. He's going to be fine. Money.
He's got to live up to that name.
Money multiple times at whatever the heck they call Heinz Field now in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, actually I have no idea. And I don't think I'm ever going to learn it because
why
bother?
Who cares? But regardless, I think he's going to be great, and that's a tough place to kick. So there you go. There's a hot take for you at the end of the show. Evan McPherson rebounds.
The Evan McPherson revenge against the haters game. We've got Mike joining us tomorrow for some film review. So for what went so well for this running game, what was working for this team against the Panthers in their most dominant display of the season. Then we get into those Leanna Brumo discussions that we talked about. Those are coming later this week as well. So we appreciate you listening to our pretty special teams heavy episode. Hey, James, special teams heavy episode here on Locked On Bengals. And until next time,
podcast.
Hoo day, and have a good one.